right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to What's the Score, and thank you so very much for joining us today. And we are here, folks, to help you find that winning combination for your business or idea. Are you an entrepreneur? Do you want to be an entrepreneur? If so, this is the right place for you. I'm Christopher Hart of the American Adversaries Radio Show, and of course, I'm joined today by Rich Jaeckle of Score Orlando. Rich, how you doing today?
Hey, Chris, how are we today?
Well, I'm doing pretty good. And yourself?
Really good. I just got back from vacation.
Buffalo, New York.
Yeah, Buffalo, Attica, actually. Had to give the cuffs back. And so I went up there for a while, got back last night in the midst of all those thunderstorms and everything. I thought I was going to land in Oz.
It must have felt like that when it was coming down. We have, once again, Rich has brought in a featured guest today who's going to join us in our conversation, and that would be Paul McNally, who is a restaurant expert and a business broker. Paul, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you, Chris. It's great to be here.
We appreciate that so very much. And, folks, we are a live show this morning here and coming to you live on AM 660, The Answer. And if you'd like to be a part of the show, if you have questions for Paul or Rich, give us a call, 407-774-8255. We are here for you. And we want to make this show not only interesting, but, how should we say, valuable to you in the information that we present to you week in and week out. And as I said, we are live, so don't hesitate to give us a call, 407-774-8255. As I said, Rich Jaeckle is from Score Orlando. Now, some of you probably are familiar with Score, but this is a brand new show, and it is the only one of its kind. So many of you probably have not heard about Score, aren't familiar with them. Or maybe you've seen the name Score at your local UPS office or something like that and don't really understand what they have to offer and what it's all about. So once again, we're going to give you a little brief rundown on what Score is all about. Rich?
Okay, those of you who tuned in expecting to hear soccer scores, you got the wrong channel.
Definitely.
This is a channel dedicated to Central Florida's small business and entrepreneurs. SCORE is a national organization consisting of volunteers, retired executives mostly. It's a nonprofit organization whose sole purpose is to help make the entrepreneurs it serves in its area more successful. And that's our sole purpose in the organization.
Well, now tell them the best part.
It's free.
There you go.
Free counseling. So come on in.
Free counseling, and you present seminars there.
That's right.
It's definitely for the person who's never run a business, but it's also definitely for the person who's already in business, is it not?
That's correct, and that's why we have some of our guest stars, guest hosts. What do we call these guys?
Featured guests.
Featured guests, yes, okay. That's why we have these guys in, and as a matter of fact, today we're going to be talking about one of the hot topics in small businesses is restaurants. So, following the pattern that we started here, the first episode was about beer, and we had John Cheek from Orlando Brewing. Yeah. The second episode was about football, and we had Mike McBath here cooking hot dogs for the 4th of July weekend.
Orlando Predators,
we talked about football. And what best is the third side of the triangle, which is food.
Talk about an all-American show.
Here we are today.
We are an all-American show.
All-American, right.
I got the three essentials: beer, football, and food, in that order. All right, and it was fascinating talking with Mike last week. He had so much to offer, as did John, and I'll be looking forward to, obviously, to talking with Paul about that. But Paul, I first met you at the Score Biz Fest several weeks back, and what did you think about that Biz Fest?
Well, it was the first Biz Fest that we did, and I am a counselor at Score also.
Okay.
And so was involved with that pretty heavily. And first one we did, and very, very successful. We had a lot of good comments back from the guests that were there, future entrepreneurs, and we did some counseling there that got some great feedback. So we're looking forward to having a second annual this year.
And you also had some great guests there. You know, you did some great panel discussions, and it was very valuable, and had some people there with some great experience. And
yeah, we also had angel investors there.
Yep.
And we had people that are interested in working more with the entrepreneurs that were there.
You also did sort of a little Shark Tank version there.
Right.
Yeah, where you had people come in and pitch their product or service.
That's right.
Who won that?
A young lady. You remember who it was? Darn, you would ask that question.
Let's put it this way. What were some of the ideas that were pitched?
Oh, one was a fold-up bicycle with a motor on it.
Yeah.
Which was you could ride around campus and stuff like that.
Great idea.
And another one had to do with the medical field.
Yeah, it was some software for the medical. The winner was somebody that did button covers.
That's right, button covers.
Button covers. What is a button cover?
Like if you want to make your blouse or your...
fancy it up.
Yeah, if you want to fancy it up,
sure.
You can cover the buttons and make it different colors, and all of a sudden it changes fashion.
Wow. And so this is just some of the ideas, folks, of people here in Central Florida coming up. There's a ton of great businesses out there that haven't started yet because it's an idea in somebody's head. And SCORE is there to help you bring that idea to fruition.
That's right. And I wasn't really attending the Shark Tank part because we were in the process of doing free speed counseling for the people that were coming in that wanted just a quick counseling session, a quick 20-minute session. So I did not hear most of the Shark Tank. I heard they were all great.
Now, when people come in for counseling, is there sort of a weeding out process where you say, look, be honest with you, there's nothing we can do for you?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Definitely.
So you're going to get the straight poop when they come in to talk to you guys.
Well, they're going to get the straight.
Well, that's what I know, yeah.
They're going to get the straight stuff there. Usually they call in to make an appointment, and the counselor that they talk to understands some screening questions to see if they're really serious. Because most of the people that call in really haven't done their homework at all. And what they need to do is take a seminar. Right. Read a book, go to the library, do something to help yourself before you go in and see a counselor.
Yeah, there is a misperception, I think, amongst a lot of people who've never had a business but kind of harbor the idea they would like one. And that is that all they need is just that great idea or that, special little tip or something, and it's all going to be real easy and it'll just snap into place. And if you don't have that, you're a certain failure. And that is the farthest thing from the truth.
Absolutely. Folks, the business idea will not sell itself. How do the consumers know about the business idea? Somebody has to tell them about it. Right, Paul?
That's correct. I mean, marketing is where it's all at, and you're out selling your services, selling your goods, and if you're not selling it, nobody's buying it.
And let's take, for example, Bill Gates. All right?
Okay.
Bill Gates basically started from scratch. Can we assume that, right? We can accept that. And what he did was he basically saw that a computer, which basically at that time was seen as something you would buy at a hobby shop, and electronic geeks would tinker around with, and that's all it was really used for. Maybe the government used it or something like that. But he saw that you could do a spreadsheet with a computer. And spreadsheets, of course, are very valuable to businesses, balance statements, that sort of thing. And he said, okay, we'll develop the software. And he got with some college buddies, and they developed the software. Then what? So he has a great idea. He's actually developed it out. But if he didn't get up and then go out and approach businesses and sell it, we wouldn't know who Bill Gates is today. His genius wasn't really in coming up with that software. It was in knowing that it could be valuable and being willing to go out and sell it.
Well, the other thing is he knew it would be valuable to a certain group, his target market.
He did his homework.
And he defined his target market and said, okay, these people can afford this.
Yes. He approached banks, insurance companies, people like this first, because they were the ones who were paying a lot of people to sit at desks and do what he knew that a computer could do.
By hand.
Exactly. And he knew it would be a tremendous savings for these companies, and therefore he kind of knew where his price point could be as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And boy, it was a genius. Still is.
Absolutely.
But he did get a lot of ideas, like the mouse didn't come from him.
No. As a matter of fact, Microsoft is basically software.
Yeah.
And they buy their hardware companies.
Well,
right?
yeah.
But
Well,
he made his billions on writing software.
That's right.
And
made interfacing
exactly
between the mouse, which came from General Electric,
right,
and the computer. So
and Xerox
he built the software.
And Xerox had a lot to do with the computers today as well.
Right.
Steve Jobs got a lot of inside information from Xerox that they basically showed him because they wanted somebody to develop it out, and their corporation wouldn't do it. So you have to not only have the idea, but you also have to know where it fits in the scheme of the economy and how you get from point A to point B. That is where SCORE is so very valuable, because you have all of these people down there, men and women, who've been through this. And I guarantee you may have a business idea, but they're going to be able to give you a person with experience in that field. Even if the idea is quote-unquote new, it's not new in the sense that there hasn't already been some sort of business.
Some sort of similar.
Exactly. So this is where SCORE can be very, very valuable to you folks. And once again, you can find out more about SCORE at going to orlando.score.org, and you spell Orlando out, orlando.score.org. Or you can give them a call over there at 407-420-4844. Let me say that again, 407-420-4844. And don't forget, they're over there at the Fashion Square.
Exactly. You can go buy a pair of shoes while you're there.
They're there 9 to 5 at the Entrepreneurial Center, and it's a walk-in deal. I mean, you don't have to have an appointment. You can walk in. They'll set you up with a counselor and see if SCORE is, if you're ready for SCORE, if SCORE's right for you, and if so, that's the beginning of the relationship.
Beginning is correct. It could last years.
And once again, this is free to the business person. All right, folks, when we come back, we'll continue the conversation. We're going to talk about our keys to success for today, which is the family buy-in. Now, what exactly does that mean? All right, and once again, if you'd like to be a part of the show, give us a call, 407-774-8255. We'll be right back with more from the SCORE. Okay, welcome back, folks, and good morning once again from the beautiful Altamont Springs studios of Salem Communications and AM 660, The Answer. You are listening to What's the Score? I'm Christopher Hart, and in the studio today, of course, is my co-host Rich Jaeckle of SCORE. You got Dr. Jaeckle and Mr. Hart.
There you go, or the day of the Jaeckle, whichever suits you.
There you go. But I kind of like Dr. Jaeckle because you have the medicine for the businesses out there. Okay?
That's very clever.
And I'm the man of many faces.
Okay. The man that drinks the potion.
There you go. And we have in the studio with us today Paul McNally, and Paul is a restaurant expert and also a business broker. Today we're going to partake of his restaurant expertise, though. But first, it's time for our keys to success. We're going to try to do this every week at this segment of the show and focus in on one thing that all business people, all entrepreneurs could use a refresher on it, if you will. And today's keys to success is the family buy-in. First of all, the first question that pops into my mind, are you talking about people, the family members investing, or is this more a term in terms of moral support? Or both of the above?
Well, it can be both of the above, but primarily it's if you go to start a new business, it's very difficult. It's going to take 100% of your time at first. And those of you who doubt that, don't do it. Because it takes away, if you have a young family or if you have a spouse that really needs your time, you can't really start a small business like that and be 50% committed. If you get into a business and you start it without the family's buy-in, you're going to get torn in two directions. One, your business and your love of the business, and the other one is your family. Now, which one do you think is going to win that tug of war?
And Paul, it can create a lot of stress in a family. Family members feeling neglected, for instance.
Oh, absolutely. In the restaurant business, it's huge because there is a definite commitment of time, and time away from family does cause some
stress,
a lot of hardships.
Most certainly. And then, of course, in particular, running a business like a restaurant business, it's not only mentally taxing, but it's very physically taxing as well. And so when you get home, you're going to be exhausted, and you need support. Basically, I mean, you need that. If you have that family structure, you need them to be, when you come home, to have a positive reinforcement about you being out there working your tail off, rather than sort of being nagged about why weren't you home all day.
Yeah, like my wife always says, "Where were you?" And I always go, "At the same bar I usually am."
But the family buy-in is important, because without that family support, it just makes the task that much more difficult. And to be honest with you, it makes the giving up process that much easier.
Right. You don't want to come home and hear, "Where have you been all day? My God, we missed you. The kids didn't get their kiss goodnight," and that kind of stuff, because you're already thinking business and how do I get this going? And then you're beat down, basically, because you're not 100% committed to your family.
Right. And so your family needs to be on board with this. It needs to be something that for instance, if you're a married couple, both of you need to be committed to. And it works both ways, because as a matter of fact, if I'm not mistaken, Rich, but you correct me, I believe that there are more women now starting businesses than men. Am I correct about that?
That is correct. And it's mostly home businesses.
Right.
Cottage businesses.
That they can work out of their house, and they can still be a stay-at-home mom, so to speak, or a stay-at-home
Absolutely.
wife, or just a stay-at-home single person. And it's beautiful to see, because it really provides them a great deal of independence to be able to live the kind of life they want to live.
Well, it gives them a feeling of what do you say, not commitment, but you're actually participating, fulfillment.
Yes.
That's it. It gives them a feeling of fulfillment, like I did this.
Sure.
I accomplished it myself.
And they can do that from the house. They can still have a family there. But, of course, now, Paul, with the restaurant business, you can't do that. Or in very rare cases. I mean, if you're, like we've talked about, making cupcakes or something. But even at that point, you got to move out of the kitchen and into a factory or something at some point. So restaurant businesses are how should we say, more or less unique in the sense that you can't do it from home, and that it is so very taxing with your time, because for a successful restaurant to have a successful restaurant, I should say, you have to put in many hours every day.
It requires your presence.
Yeah, it's not a 40-hour work week in the restaurant business, and that's sometimes where the taxing comes in with the family. You're working early morning to late at night, not seeing the kids, not seeing the wife, and it becomes very, very difficult.
Yeah. Once again, folks, you are listening to What's the Score on AM 660 The Answer. We are live this Saturday morning, and if you'd like to give us a call, the number is 407-774-8255. And we're talking about basically the necessity for family support, in particular for new businesses as you get started. You really need that moral support and the other people committed to your efforts.
Yeah, right. And Paul and I were talking off mic here a few minutes ago, but part of this whole family thing is, should I hire family members to work with me or for me? Paul, how did you answer that?
Well, that's a whole nother stress point when it deals with family, because what happens is everybody wants to be the boss. And you really have to have defined roles no matter what business you're in, so that everybody knows what they're going to be doing to make the business successful.
But now it can be a very positive experience, I would think, because let's face it, one of the keys to success for, say, a lot of Asian immigrants,
there you go,
is that they have that family backing.
There
literally, they work say at a convenience store or some retail type business. You will many times find the family members there, and that way they keep the wealth in house, if you will.
That's correct, and it's very noticeable if you go into a Chinese restaurant. You've got the kids working as servers. You've got the father working as a cook. You've got the mother at the cash register. And it's all like clockwork. Everything works. Paul, you had some good things to say about that.
Nope, that's 100% right. Everybody just needs to know the role that they're playing in the organization.
Yeah, the role.
And that way, everything will work like a fine-tuned Swiss watch.
And what about the American families and upgrading? Do they have that family structure typically?
There are a lot of partnerships that do work that way, but it's a little bit more difficult than what we've seen with some of the other nationalities.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm glad you brought, because I was just thinking of a cultural question as well, which is what you were asking there. Because, we do definitely see changes going on in the American family structure that we don't, for instance, see going on in the Asian family structure. In other words, they have much more the traditional nuclear family. And guess what? It works. It works not only in the home, but it works also in business.
Correct.
And this is something that we as Americans used to do as well. In particular, when we were an agricultural society, because you had the kids who had to get out there and pick and I'm talking white, black, all colors, had to get out, because my dad and his brothers came from a farming family. And before school, they had to go out and milk the cow. They had to pick the onions in Georgia, or pick the peaches or the pecans or whatever. And in doing that, they kept the wealth in the family. And they all became successful. And my dad went on to become a restaurateur and was a successful restaurateur because he had learned the work ethic, for one, and business principles, for two, as a child. And it wasn't as though he was being abused, okay, like some factory or harsh work environment.
Yeah, right.
This was part of the culture. This is how we became great as a nation. And I think this is one of the things we're going to have to get back to if we want to re-achieve that greatness. And perhaps we're being forced to in this economic time as more people are forced to move back home with their parents. And I'm talking about people in their 30s and 40s. Perhaps in an odd sort of way, that may end up being a good thing.
I hope so. Back in those days, I grew up on a country too. And back in those days, the chores were very distributed and defined.
Right.
You knew what your job was out there.
Exactly. And you knew what would happen if you didn't do your job.
And you knew that there was a woodshed.
That's right. That's right. Or that you wouldn't eat. Or you wouldn't have milk to drink.
Right.
Or that there was a discernible and palpable reaction to your inaction.
That's right.
If you will.
They had the hunters and they had the gatherers.
Yep, absolutely. Paul, the family support, once it does become, say, an issue of is it the business or is it me? What is normally the reaction when that happens? Because I know it must happen quite often.
Oh, it absolutely does. And, a lot of it depends on who is running the business and what the expectations are of the people that are working it. When you look at family businesses, sometimes you've got, a husband and wife that are running a business sort of as a partnership. But then when you bring kids in and you become a true family business where everybody's pulling on the same rope, it can help bring you to meet your goals.
Okay. All right. Well, we're coming up on the half-hour break. When we come back, we're going to focus more on the restaurant business. What makes restaurants fail more than any other business in America? And we'll be joined once again by Paul McNally, who's an expert in that field, and Rich Jaeckle, of course, of SCORE. And you can join us as well at 407-774-8255. And don't forget, folks, you can become a member of SCORE. You can get emails from them and notifications of special events like the Biz Fest that they just had a few weeks ago. All you have to do is go to orlando.score.org and sign up. That's Orlando, write it all out, orlando.score.org. And once again, you can call them on the phone, 407-420-4844, and you can walk in over there in Fashion Square at the Entrepreneurial Center, and it's sandwiched in between Penny's and Sears. And just look for the green vines on the building on the outside, and you can't miss it. It's a beautiful place the way they have it set up in there. And
they say you go in, but it's called the National Entrepreneur Center. SCORE is inside the National Entrepreneur Center. So to stop confusion.
All right. Okay, and if you want to be unconfused about restaurant business, stick around because we're going to talk about that in the next hour. Okay, welcome back to the show, folks. You are listening to What's the Score, the live show, the only show of its type on in Central Florida any day of the week, much less Saturday morning. And because we are live, that does mean that you can call in if you have a question about the score, about a business, in particular today about the restaurant industry. 407-774-8255 is the number. I'm Christopher Hart of the American Adversaries Radio Show, and I'm joined by Rich Jaeckle of SCORE. And today we're joined by Paul McNally. He is our featured guest. And Paul, just real quickly, give us just a little bit of your bio, if you would, please.
Well, I've been in the restaurant business. I spent about 20 years owning restaurants. I've owned 4 restaurants in my life and worked for a lot of the different companies. Then spent about 20 years in the distribution side of the business for one of the major companies selling to restaurants. So understand both sides, the operations of the restaurant side and also the distribution channels on them buying their products. All
right. Well, you said you own 4 restaurants. If you don't mind me asking, did they all go out of business? Did you sell them? Both? None of the above?
All of them were sold and stayed in business. I had one up north. I come originally from the Boston area. I had one up there, and we had 3 down here in Florida, and all of them are still operating today.
What did you do that other restaurants that failed didn't do?
Well, we had commitment to the business, and that's probably one of the biggest things, which we talked about in the first half of the show. You know, you must have commitment, and you have to be there working the business, running the business, and taking a major role. The restaurant business is a tough business to run on an absentee basis.
And let me back up for a second, too, if I could, and that is your restaurants. Did you try to have a menu that was unlike other restaurants, or you just wanted a menu where people liked your food better?
Well, the concept is very, very important. You need to be consistent with what you've got. You've got to have food that people like, but you can't be everything to everybody. And that's one of the big reasons why there are failures today. You're trying to please everybody, and you have to have that niche in the marketplace and sell something that people are looking for.
Rich?
Hey, Paul, back up here a little bit and explain to us novices what the concept word is that you're using here.
Well, when you have lack of a concept, you're trying to appeal to...
What do you mean concept?
Concept is basically what type of food you're offering and who you're trying to sell it for.
There you go.
Okay. Am I going to sell pizzas or burritos or hamburgers or steaks or whatever, but not try to have them all, but try to be good at one or a few of them?
Exactly. You need to be known for something, so if people are looking for a prime rib tonight, then you're the place that they're going to go to for prime rib, and you're the first place that comes to mind. So it's maybe not one item that you need to just be known for, although there are many, many concepts that have that. You can take McDonald's, for example. They get known for their hamburger. But you look at their menu today, they have many, many different items. But they're still known for their hamburger. So any concept needs to be known for one or two particular items on what will drive people to that restaurant.
If I might interject, you mentioned McDonald's. As a matter of fact, they have seen some softness in their sales over the last few years, and their studies indicate it is because they now have too many menu items. They're not focused anymore. They still see them as for hamburgers, but then you get all this other stuff too. They're trying to cater to an audience that is not their core audience, if you will.
And that's absolutely true. And I was reading an interesting article just recently that if Ray Kroc was still alive today and looked down, he'd say, you know, I started this with hamburgers, shakes, and French fries, and look what they've done to it.
He would have a fit.
Yep, absolutely.
Because his whole notion his whole key to success in that particular business was the simplicity, the quickness, the quality of the product, and the cleanliness. And those were the things that made it work. And the more you get the process complicated by having all of this other stuff, somewhere things begin to sort of unravel.
Okay, but I have a tendency to lean away from you guys on this one. Because during Ray Kroc's day, hamburgers were the big thing, hamburgers and hot dogs, but he didn't feature hot dogs. I mean, think about it. You're back in the 50s.
Right.
And the best thing that could happen to you, I remember this, is go out and grill a hamburger on the grill, right? So that was a staple back in the 50s.
It was a big
We're
deal.
living in the 2000s where the hamburger is not the staple anymore. They now have salads. They now have other things that I wouldn't eat, but younger people do. So, you have to, if you're serving that clientele, you have to change a little bit with the times. Now, what do you guys think about that?
Well, let me just interject this, and I'll let you have your say, Paul. To validate your point, Ray Kroc also said he was asked one time in an interview. This was after they had introduced Chicken McNuggets.
Ah, yes.
And the interviewer asked him, first of all, is McDonald's going to be around in the year 2000? This was like in the 1980s. And if so, what would they be serving? And Ray Kroc's response was, yes, we'll be around. And I don't know exactly what we'll be serving, but I'll guarantee you this. We'll be serving more of it than anybody else in the world.
There you go. So he was forward thinking.
He was.
But he didn't stay glued to the hamburger.
Right. But I think he still liked the idea of the simplistic sort of menu. But anyway, Paul.
You're right. And the company has evolved and changed with the times. When you look at what people are looking for today, they're looking for more natural type foods. They're looking for local sourced foods. That's what the younger people today are looking for. And you're seeing a lot of restaurants featuring in on that and going after that type of business and using that as their marketing.
You think they'll ever go to sushi?
I don't know. But I know this. They employ very highly prized chefs to develop their new menu items. And they're working on it every day. Paul, is that something that if I'm going to get into the restaurant business, am I going to have to be prepared to, on a constant basis, come up with new menu items?
Changes are real important in any restaurant, in any business, because people will get bored, will get tired of the same things over and over. So that's why changes definitely are important. You see all of the major chains will do 2 or 3 different menus every year, sometimes seasonally for different foods that are in season, and changing up with different menu items on the menus.
Okay, once again, folks, you are listening to What's the Score, the show, the only one of its kind, designed to help you come up with that winning combination for your business, your restaurant. AM 660, The Answer is the station. 407-774-8255 is the number. We are live.
Yeah, I'd like to ask Paul a question. What do I, as a customer, look for in a restaurant when I first walk in besides a beer sign?
Well, for you, Rich, that would be the most important.
No, I have my priorities.
If the beer is cold, then
the
beer is cold, then I'm there. One of the biggest things is spotty customer service. Customer service is such an important item, and that is usually what will keep people coming back on a consistent basis or not coming back because the customer service was spotty. The way that you're handled.
What do you mean by spotty, Lucy?
Well, the way the customers are handled along every step of the dining experience, from the time you are greeted in the door to the time you're paying your check on the way out. Customer service is all the interaction between the server, the manager, everything that that gives you your feeling on whether you like the place or whether you don't like the place.
The dining experience is every bit, if not more important, than the quality of the food.
That's absolutely right.
And I'm sure everybody in the listening audience has had an experience where you've gone into a restaurant, you might have liked the food, but you got lousy service, so you weren't inclined to go back.
Yeah, so team synergy in your server team is really important, right?
Absolutely, and not just within the server team, but with the back of the house, with the kitchen, on how the food is executed. There's just so many moving parts in a restaurant that one of those wheels stops turning, and the whole experience is changed for the customer.
And once again, this happens as soon as you walk in the door. And as a matter of fact, most restaurants know it even starts happening before you walk in the door. I mean, you have to have the outside appearance of the restaurant looking appropriate. It has to be clean. If it's a particular type themed restaurant, you want that effect before you even walk in the door, hitting the customer. So it's more than just the food in the restaurant business. And, the restaurant, let me ask this, Rich, is the restaurant business not necessarily, I'm not asking the biggest failure rate, but is it the most likely business to be opened by a person? In other words, are more restaurants opened than any other type of business?
Yes, the answer to that is yes. Going back to something that you said, you want to portray the theme, of your restaurant in your building. Well, take the Oscar Mayer mobile.
Yeah.
Right? What is it called?
The Wienermobile.
Wienermobile, right.
Yeah.
Does that typify that or not?
Well, absolutely. Absolutely. And
yes, to answer your question, we get more clients coming in that I can make some really good chili.
Right.
So I'm going to open a restaurant and I'm going to sell it in a food truck.
Right.
Okay, and that's going to be another topic that we're going to be discussing down the road here, a food truck versus brick-and-mortar restaurant.
Yeah.
One interesting statistic that the University of Ohio just came out with, 60% of the restaurants that open close in the first year.
60%. Listen to that, people.
And 80% are closed within the first 5 years. So there's only a 20% success rate in restaurants, and that's a study that was just done recently.
Okay, when we come back, we'll continue this conversation with Paul McNally and talking about the restaurant businesses. In the next segment, I'm going to ask him in particular, what's the biggest thing that makes restaurants fail? And if you have a question yourself, 407-774-8255 is the number. Don't forget, SCORE is there for you, and you can contact them by either going to orlando.score.org or giving them a call at 407-420-4844. Also, are you ready to go to that next level with radio? Would you like to perhaps have a radio show of your own like this? Or how about radio advertising to get your name out into the public? Radio is a great way to do it. Give Paul Proley a call at Salem Communications here, 407-618-1769, and see what radio can do for your business. 407-618-1769. We'll be right back with more from What's the Score? All right, once again, good Saturday morning to you folks, and welcome back to What's the Score, the only show of its kind anywhere that I know of, because it's all about helping you come up with that winning combination for your business or business idea. I'm Christopher Hart, along with Rich Jaeckle of SCORE. We're joined in the studio today by Paul McNally, also of SCORE, who's a restaurateur and also a business broker. And by the way, Paul's going to join us once again next week, and the focus of our conversation will be whether to buy a business or start your own.
Right. Buy an existing business and the clients, or build your own. So, and that's always a dilemma for people who are fresh, how should I say, new to the entrepreneurial game. Should they start their own business or buy one? Okay, but I want to get back to Paul McNally because today we're talking about restaurants. They're the most common business that is started and the most likely to fail. And right before the break, Paul told us that within 5 years, 80% of them have failed, have closed their doors. So my question to you then, Paul, is what is the number one reason why restaurants fail?
Well, the number one reason is inexperience. Potential restaurateurs, they don't realize the specific set of demands that come along with owning a restaurant. They may be a great cook, but can they run what happens in the front of the house with the servers, with the customer experience in the front of the house? They may have the best chili, the best hamburger in the world, but if they can't get it delivered to the customer in a good atmosphere and a friendly atmosphere, then that experience out front is going to offset everything else. So inexperience is probably the one biggest reason for failure.
Can I, as an inexperienced cook, have an experienced or have a successful restaurant?
Well, it can happen, but usually most of the successes are people that have been in the business and done most of the different jobs, worn all the shoes and of all the positions in the business, that sets them up for success more so than somebody that just knows how to cook.
Okay, very good. So,
and I think one reason why so many people think that they can make it in the restaurant business is because they can cook.
Right.
And they cook pretty good. And their family and friends tell them, this is great stuff, you should have your own restaurant. And so the kernel of the idea is planted, the seed is planted. And it is so much more than just the food. For instance, I don't know if either one of you guys ever watched that show, Duck Dynasty.
Of course, yeah.
But, do you remember the episode where Kay wanted to run a restaurant, and she told this restaurant friend of theirs that she wanted to do it, and he says, okay, well, I'm closed on Sunday. You have the restaurant's yours on Sunday. Well, she tried it, and of course the guys were out hunting ducks, and so all of a sudden all these other problems that had nothing to do with cooking and having good food crept up. And so it was very illustrative of people out there who think that they would have a great restaurant simply because they can cook good. That's not even half the problem.
Yeah, nobody ever told my wife to open a restaurant.
I hope she's not listening.
Yeah.
You may be buying your dinner tonight.
She's still up in New York. I'm safe.
Okay.
Well, and Chris, that leads into another reason, which is bad people management, because you're not just managing one group of people. It might not be the cooks that you're managing, but you've got a lot of different groups with different skill sets. So as an owner, you're managing all of those different areas, and if you don't know what they should be doing, you can't put out specific expectations for them to meet. So it's hard for them to manage it. So there's a ton of moving parts with varying skill sets and talents and personalities that come into play. Restaurants aren't one or two employees. There's usually multiple employees.
Might it be a good idea if someone wants to open a restaurant and has an idea, is a good cook, and has great recipes, perhaps to go work in a restaurant for a while first?
Absolutely. Experience is the best thing, especially for some of the big corporate chains, because they're successful for one reason. They do things right. They've got processes in place. They've got systems in place. And that's what the restaurant business is all about, is doing a lot of repetition correctly on a regular basis.
And now, if I am running a restaurant, what should I expect from the government? And do they play a big role in whether I succeed or not?
They play a big role in the portion of the profits that they're going to take from you, without a doubt.
And also now, of course, with Obamacare, that can come into play as well.
Definitely. Depending on the number of employees that you have, you may have to contribute to that. But, you mentioned about the government playing a part. A big part of failure for restaurants is restaurants not paying taxes. I mean, there are state taxes, federal taxes,
sales taxes
that all are due on a regular basis, and we see restaurants going out of business all the time because the state is putting liens on them, or the federal government's putting liens on them with hefty penalties when they're paying their taxes late. That's a major factor, is not having the proper accounting to warrant. So again, it's not just having good food, it's running an entire business.
Rich, if I go to SCORE, and will you warn me of some of these things?
Warn you about?
Educate me in terms of, the tax and the regulation end of it.
Oh, sure, yeah. I'll warn you, but you'll probably still do it anyway. Paul, I have a question for you, my friend. I'm a good cook, but I know nothing about running the office or the servers or anything. What do I do?
Well, you've got a couple of choices. You can the number one choice is try to bring people in that understand that part of the business, but with that comes a cost. You're going to be paying for somebody to manage. You're hiring managers now, and so now you've got additional overhead, so you've got to make sure that you've got that written into your business plan to make sure that you've got the money to be able to sustain those extra costs.
How do I trust them? They're handling my money.
Well, it's like any business. You've got to look at what they've done in the past, get references, talk to people that they've worked for in the past, and a lot of it's gut feeling and having the right controls in place so that you've got some checks and balances.
Now, Rich, if I have a relationship with SCORE and I have, hired people and I'm still a little bit uncertain about it, can SCORE help sort of guide me through that process?
Absolutely, yes. I have several clients that I'm still working with for years now, making sure that if we're looking to fill a position, they come to me and we discuss the job description. Get it down on paper, what you want these people to be responsible for and what their duties are.
Yeah. Make no mistake, folks. SCORE for you, imagine yourself running a business. SCORE can be your corporate structure, if you will. Let's say, for instance, you run IBM. All right, you're the CEO of IBM. You have a legal staff. You have a financial staff. You have an R&D staff. You have all of these things, and they're all working for you. That is SCORE, and it's right here in Orlando. Of course, you can access them anywhere in the country, but they have a walk-in center, the Entrepreneurial Center, over there at Fashion Square, and that's what they offer you. And here's the best part. You don't have to put them on the payroll.
It's free, folks. It's free.
You do not have to put them on the payroll. Paul, are there other big reasons why restaurants fail?
Well, other things are...
for instance, financing, that sort of thing. Obviously, since restaurants fail at a high clip, banks are probably, when you come in the door and you say you want to open a restaurant, they show you the back door out, right?
Absolutely. Financing is very, very tough with buying starting up a restaurant, almost impossible. Buying an existing restaurant, the best source of financing there is if the person that you're buying it from will finance the new buyer, and that sometimes is the case, especially in some of the higher priced restaurants.
Paul, I'm a cook and an owner. How much time do I spend in the kitchen versus on the outside?
Well, it's that's certainly up to you, but
what would you recommend, to keep
most cooks, most people that start a restaurant that are basically cooks and chefs, that's their comfort zone, and they tend to spend too much time in the kitchen.
Exactly.
Because they're comfortable there. Important part is to get out with the customers, get feedback, get reactions on how you're doing. One of the best things you can do is talk to your customers and ask them to rate you and give you a scorecard. They're certainly going to do it when they leave on social media. You'd rather get the feedback face to face. So if you've got issues, you've got things that need to be fixed, you've got a chance to fix them right there.
Exactly, and that's what I was fishing for there. Guys, if you're a chef and an owner, don't keep your head stuck in the oven. Go out and mingle with your clients out there. Find out how your servers are doing. Look at them to see what kind of attitudes they have.
The other thing is customers love to be able to say they know the owner. So if you get out there and mingle with the customers and get to know them by first name basis a little bit, then they're going to bring their friends back, and knowing the owner is going to be a big thing for them.
Yeah, knowing the bartender is a big thing for me.
That's very important. If I might just interject this, we have a sponsor for our radio show, The American Adversaries, Pasquale Barba of Cafe Positano, right up the street here. He's not only a sponsor of the show, but he actually comes on the show. And that has given him that I know the owner feel with our listeners. And they go in there and they say, hey, and he works the crowd. He stays out of the kitchen and on the floor, and he goes around and talks to each couple, each table, and they say, yeah, I heard you on the radio. They have that connection already there, and he takes advantage of that. And he's had that restaurant up there 18 years now. And by the way, you talk about the experience once you come. He has a hostess greet you when you come in, cheerful. They seat you. The waiters and waitresses are very knowledgeable about the menu. They're all very helpful and very friendly. It's the epitome of the ideal restaurant experience. But he also has taken advantage of that connecting with the customer via radio. And folks, you can do this too for your business. Any type of business, anytime somebody comes in your shop, they want to talk to the owner, or they want to know or have that feeling that they know the owner. And one way to do that is through radio. And you can have a show like this, which will give you a great deal of prestige and exposure, or simply by advertising on the radio, which will give you a lot of name recognition and bring people in and say, hey, I heard you on the radio. And if you would like to find out how inexpensive that can be, give Paul Proley a call here at Salem Communications at 407-618-1769. Well, gentlemen, it's been very informative, and I appreciate you guys coming in here on Saturday, and look forward to next week.
Yeah, that was fun. Paul?
I had a great time, and I look forward to being back next Saturday.
Okay, very good. Thanks a lot out there.
All right, and that's Rich Jaeckle of SCORE. And for Rich, Paul McNally, and myself, Christopher Hart, we want to thank you for being with us today, and we look forward to talking once again with you next week from AM 660 The Answer with What's the Score?